Good evening and welcome to the December 12th, 2024 Town of Concord Historical Commission meeting. We are conducting this meeting online in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The public may access this call through both telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask presenters questions and provide public comments on topics and discussions following the presenter's presentation and questions from the commission. To do so, please raise your hand in the participant function of the Zoom meeting platform and you will be acknowledged. I will call on each commissioner for comments on the topic and then open the meeting for public comment. Once there are no more public comments, I will ask for a motion from the commission to vote on the applications. At this time, I would ask for a roll call from the commission members to make sure we have a quorum. Members of the commission, would you please identify yourself, starting with Melissa?
Melissa Sawfield, here, present.
Lauren?
Lauren Meyer, here.
Nancy Frisella Lee?
Nancy Frisella Lee, here.
Nancy Nelson?
Nancy Nelson, present.
Doug? Did I see Doug?
Present.
Yep, and Alan Bogosian here. So we have a full slate tonight. The meeting is officially called to order. And first up is the Wright Tavern update with Tom Wilson.
Yes. Should I just pick it up, Ellen? Is there anything?
Sure,
you want?
yeah.
Okay. So I hope you all received well, first of all, you pause for a moment and mention that Tom Kearns from DSK he's now, we can see his visual. He's joining me. We have a contract now as advisors, as an architect to the projects and to the many projects that we are working on. And so he's available to answer some questions for you. And we're looking forward to a great relationship working with Tom and his team.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody.
Good. So one thing, what I have done is that I've sent you a slide deck. You may or may not have had a chance to look at it. That kind of shows you what we're doing with the Wright Tavern. I think it was really important to put any kind of specific request into a context of the overall plan for the building and the programs and services that are going to be generated from that. So if you had an opportunity to look at it, it included our vision, our mission, our goals. It sort of looks at what are the major things we've accomplished over the last several years, which has been enormous. It was wonderful. It lists a lot of the capital projects that we want to do, the exterior, the water, the fire suppression system, et cetera. It also lays out a lot. We have been working with a firm called Full Circle, who is an expert in doing interior decorations of historic homes. They're in, I believe they're in Plimpton, Massachusetts. And they, quite well known in in a lot of circles for their creative and finding the right balance between creativity and preservation of the historic look and feel of homes. And they've helped us to develop the things that we want to change around paint color, light fixtures, and all that sort of stuff. So what we then, also in that presentation was a description of each room. There are 6 rooms in that building on the first floor. Those are the ones we're talking about. What the purpose of that room is, what the focus is, and the color paint and the light fixtures and some other unique things we want to do with each room. So I provided that all to you because I want you to know what we're doing, and I want to share that with you and be open with you about it. And we are, we haven't hammered a nail in yet. We haven't picked up a paintbrush, and so we're still in the process of finalizing these plans. And any feedback we clearly welcome. Then there are some specific things that we're needing that I think, and this is where Alan and the commission will need your assistance as to what is I'll call it your jurisdiction to approve, and what are some things that as the operators of the building, we have the authority to change the paint colors, or does that need your requirement? And I don't really know where the line is, and so I decided to just share with everything we're doing and walk through the structural things that I do think you, if you don't need to approve it, you clearly need to know about. And those are things, I made a list, and it's really start on page 22 of that slide deck. And then I pulled slides that came from the preservation restriction agreement that shows the work of what is historic, what is not, in each of the rooms that are covered in those points that are listed on page 22. So I really wanted to sort of share with you as much as possible what we're planning and what, I don't know what we need your approval for. So, okay, you can, gauge us in what we have to do, and what are some things that we do with your approval, then we'll talk about it, and then things that just be aware of what we're doing. And at the end of the day, we want to create this in terms of a show place, a place that the town can be quite proud of. It will serve a multiple interest of meeting and events and things of that nature, and be a place where people can hang out and have a lot of fun and build a community, which is what was supposed to with our mission. So that's my sort of prelim, and I guess I want to first ask, are there any sort of questions I'll call prior to page 22, which has a picture which goes through all the things I just mentioned and shows each of the rooms? Are there any feedback or any guidance or anything? And let me ask one other question, Alan, if I may. How much time do we have? Because I know you have a full agenda.
No, yeah, but I mean, you can go, you can keep going.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. And I'm not an expert on the what we actually are able to govern, but as far as I know, we don't get involved with design plans or paint colors or things like that, as far as I know, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. So Melissa?
Well, yeah, so my first question, even before we would start, Tom, so is the preservation restriction itself?
Good question.
We have yet to sign this,
Right, that's right, that's right.
and it does govern a fair amount of, I think, what you're talking about.
It does. Yep.
So,
So I'll tell you where we stand with that. It's a great question. I meant to bring it up earlier. So we have been operating as if the preservation restriction agreement is in effect, because this has taken a lot longer than any of us expected. And there's a lot of reasons, and I won't go through the excuses and stuff, but it's way overdue. So I just said, well, it doesn't matter, because we're going to operate that way. So we have tried to every way along, and as part of the purpose of tonight, we haven't really done much in terms of anything in terms of building. So we want to, so we've been trying to live to the code of the preservation restriction. As I understand it, the biggest issue that the Mass Historical Commission had was that the photographs and the text that were included in Exhibit D of the preservation restriction were so small, and so they were basically, you didn't need a microscope to read it. And so we've asked Lynn Spencer, her group, to redo all those photographs. As I understand, they were received a few days ago. Perhaps Ann and Clifford can speak to that. So we now have that portion, and the town council, I think, has looked at it. I don't know the feedback. The one thing that's missing is a site plan. We've hired a firm called Dillis and Boy, and a guy named Seth Donahue, who is leading that site plan review. We contract with him in October, and he was supposed to have it done in November. And I called them today, talked to them. He's out until next Tuesday. And so nobody in the firm knew the status of that site plan. So my sense is we should get it within the next few days or few weeks. It's very close, but we've contracted with them to do the site plan. I gave him a lot of information he asked for. I just haven't seen anything. And so that's kind of where we are with it. So as soon as we get that, I'll pass it off to Ann, who then will obviously communicate with you all, and that'll show the site plan dynamics.
Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to repeat what Melissa said, which is that I really haven't studied the preservation restriction. I think it would be very, very good for the commission to have a very clear sense of what, outline of what the parameters are, and for it to be almost like a checklist or something that is a kind of simpler version of because there's a lot of stuff in the restriction that isn't related to work. It's has to do with insurance and so forth. But when it comes to actually modifications to the building or its site, I think it would be good to know exactly where you need to come to us for discussion, even if it's just consultation and not approval. I've been in situations where sometimes it's not a sort of an HDC level review, but it's a consultation. So it'd be good to just, I think, now that it looks like the restriction's getting close to being final, let's get this kind of bulleted list for everybody. And I think that'll make it easier for you, easier for the commission, and just make everything more efficient.
So I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. And so tonight is sort of the beginning of that discussion. So to review this, what I'm going to cover when we get to the point of going after page 22, as I call it, which is sort of a list of things, is that in each item, like, for example, we would like, there's some questions about what to do with what called the door that leads to on the First Perry side. The door is basically not very functional. People have been into the Bright Tavern recently that know what I'm talking about. It's very difficult to open. We'd like to replace it. We've explored the notion of repairing it. It's extremely expensive, and so we'd like to replace it. And so what I've shown you in the pages in the slide deck I'm going to show you in a second will be what is the documentation on that door, or on each of the pieces that we're asking your review or approval for. What does the preservation restriction agreement describe that piece of the building? Is it modern? Is it early? What is it? So every piece that we're talking about is documented in the slide deck that you have. So we will go into the level of detail. And I don't necessarily expect we'll get all done tonight, because you may want to do a site review, a site visit. That's fine. But we want to get the ball started, because we're trying to get a lot of work done before April 1st.
Yeah. One last comment, Nancy Nelson.
I agree with what's already been said, that figuring out what our actual responsibilities are in the preservation restriction is really, really important. I'm curious to know if you've established an overall preservation philosophy that would restrict the amount of new things that you're going to maybe assume would have been in an old 1700s tavern, or are you going to stick to what you actually really know and can document? I know the liquor cage was going to be put back in the tap room, and wainscoting was going to be added elsewhere. Just running through quickly, those are the kind of things that I don't feel I have mastery of yet. There's a lot of information in that. Tom, thank you.
Right.
And it is really exciting to think about able to have a, whatever you call it, a shrub or something there in the future. But those kinds of things related to what your preservation philosophy and how committed you are to retaining, rather than fancying up what it might have looked like. I think it's actual preservation or restoration compared to conjecture. That's all.
That's great. Great question.
Melissa, do you have one more?
No.
Yes, I have one more, because and maybe Lauren can help with this. Kind of teeing off what Nancy's saying, your preservation philosophy, what period are you trying to take the tavern back to? And is that how much does that influence what you would do? And Lauren, how much leeway does someone like that? Because Lauren, I look to you because I think you've done a lot more of this than any of us have, perhaps except for maybe Nancy.
Maybe.
It's hard to know what we're evaluating, what we're judging, what we would restrict. Because I understand Tom is trying to care for this property, but also make it somehow commercially viable.
I don't know, maybe, are you gonna cover that in your presentation, Tom, or?
I think so. I mean, I think the question really is the philosophy that's underlying. We haven't articulated that, but there is a philosophy in which we've been operating from.
Mhm.
And to the question about time period, there's no single time period where we're going to go for. Each room will be
Varies.
focused on what its period is about, and so that's what we've intended to do that way, in a way that essentially takes it back and recreates the experience of what people would have felt like and seen at that point in time. So, but I'll speak to that as we go into different elements of the citizenship changes.
Can I just, I know Nancy's got her hand up. Can I just say one quick thing and for the commission, and that is, and Tom, you know, this is just so exciting. I mean, bravo. Typically, what I think the way we want to frame this is if we look at the Secretary of Interior standards, you know, there is the standard reconstruction. You're not doing that. You're somewhere in the standards of preservation, rehabilitation, or restoration. And you've done, and typically for in a situation like that, you would be, I think, but you guys should correct me if I'm wrong, you would be in a rehabilitation mode because you are making this historic property usable in a new way. And that does have some implications for, you know, ADA and code requirements and all sorts of kinds of, and so I would look to, and so to your team, Tom, you know, think a little bit about the standards for rehabilitation. And that does allow you to bring in some new things, but with an overlying objective of preserving historic character and preserving the character defining features of the building. So
Which are carefully articulated, I think, in the preservation restriction.
right.
And you're right that the level, and we've had conversations with the national parks who provide us a lot of funding, that you are right, Laura, that the type of work we're doing is the rehabilitation, and that definition fits within the framework of what we're doing. So from a philosophical point of view, that's the spirit of what we're doing. And yeah.
Nancy Priscilla Lee.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not as experienced as Lauren. When I haven't looked very carefully at what you said, but I did look through it, and you know, you have furniture and you want to reproduce a desk, I think, or a table, and you have a targeted date of April 19th. I don't know how committed you are to having all of those things that are in your plans completed. And I think I just worry about you being too hasty, and because I have concerns that maybe you need to go to a few different consultants to get various opinions about period furniture, for example, getting consultants or people who have great experience working on public houses that are open to the public. So I guess I'm just questioning that target date of April 19th, how much you want to get done, and are you willing to kind of leave out some of that so that you make sure you do it right?
Yeah.
So
actually, the date is even worse than it's April 1st. We're trying to get, because we don't know what there's going to people be arriving on the 12th. So actually, we're trying to create it. I keep saying that whatever work we're doing is going to stop by April 1st. Nancy, you think you're right. There are three elements to each one of the things we're doing. One is sort of the approval, both of you all if necessary, and our board, and other people are taking input about what it is we're doing in each room. So it's the approval process. which is a function of the design and everything else. The second part we look at is the funding. We don't have the complete funding for all these things. We have some funding, maybe about a third to a half, once again, depending on what it actually ends up costing. We have estimates for each of the components we're trying to go for. But whether or not that holds up when you actually go out to bid with a contractor and say what's going to cost to paint or electrical lights or whatever else. So funding is a critical part of it. And the third is getting a contractor who can do the work between now and then. And so if we can't find a good contractor and one that has worked in historic properties and one that's got a great reputation, so we will get done. One of the things that I have done to relieve myself from unbelievable stress, and that is I've given up on a deadline. And I've had this saying it will get done when it gets done. And I would want as much of that done by April 1st or the early April, so that the tourists and the people who come to Concord really are wowed by the building and really are wowed by the experience of being inside the building. We'll get done what we can get done. And if we can't get any of it done, it'll be what it is today. And that's it. But if we can get the walls painted or light fixtures up or flooring in the tea room, that's great. And it all depends on what that is. And we're taking and looking for lots of advisors around the pieces. The furniture I'm not so worried about, because furniture is replaceable. What I pay a lot of attention to is the colors and the flow that the colors would have, and the light fixtures. Those are the ones that are, that are more permanent in a sense. The furniture we can always, do it. There's not going to be a lot of furniture. There will be in one area of the tables and chairs, but we're not trying to do too much in terms of new things. Each room, once again, has a focus to it.
Nancy Nelson, one final one, and then we'll let Tom move
Yeah, I wonder if the NPS grant, which was huge and actually a big surprise to us, but pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
If there are any guidelines in there that would help us understand what the Park Service expects, and then we could also spin off of that. And then the only other thing is priorities, because some things I saw kind of short-term things were baked into the slides with long-term higher cost things. So priorities.
Yeah. So it's a good question about the national park. They have they have, as you can imagine, intense reviews of everything.
Yeah, we can imagine that.
And what I was thinking, we have things like the National Park Service. I talked a little bit in the thing, has 3 projects that they're funding. One is the repair and the repainting of the exterior of the building. 2 is putting in place a fire suppression and security system. And 3rd is to address any kind of plumbing, water coming in, water coming out, sewage, all that, and its connections with the town, any of those kinds of issues. The structures report and the inspection report all identify like rusty pipes and some problems in that area. So we put that in terms of requests. So that's the scope of the National Park Service. We also have a $150,000 grant from the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, and also the Lynn Foundation, which totals about $300,000 between the two of them, to deal with both the a potential new entrants. I call it a potential because we've got a long ways to go to get there, and also the creation of the refreshment center, as we call it, and what that might involve. So. And also working with some of the doorways that are not currently ADA compliant to make them ADA compliant. In which case, when we start on that, before we start that journey, we're coming back definitely to you, because that is a structural question that we'll need your approval on. What it would be, how to be done, and all that sort of stuff. But those are the funding elements of all these various projects. And then all the things you saw, what I call for the visitor experience, which is deals with the interior, is all going to be funded from private donations that we're working on right now to generate.
Oh, that's helpful.
Melissa, one quick comment.
Okay, so this is really quick. So Tom, to you, I just remember the very first time I went to Philadelphia Independence Hall, and I thought, this is it? There are just some lovely chairs. It's a really simple room, and this was where all the sausage was made. I think a lot of it is helping just people to remember what happened there in 1774, the courage that those people, and it was very simple. It's not wow.
Yeah,
The wow is when it finally dawns on them that this really simple environment is what ultimately spawned this country.
yes.
That's all.
You know, we had plans on a much more expansive wow kind of video technology, all this sort of stuff.
Oh, right.
Early on. And we've moved away from that exactly for the point you've made, Melissa, the simplicity, the beauty of the simplicity of the building. And that I remember giving a tour to a bunch of graduate students in history. And I was talking to them, we were standing in what's we call the Provincial Congress room, talking about the Provincial Congress. And I said to them, you know, you'll know more than I'll ever know about this place. But in this room was Sam Adams, was John Hancock, I could list off the names. They were likely in this room talking about these issues. So if you're quiet, you can probably hear their voices. And what was interesting about that sort of moment of silence, that beat, if you will, it impressed me to says that the beauty of this building is the authenticity of it. And so we want to make sure that it feels authentic and it looks, and it's, you know, it's not white walls and bright lights. It's much more indirect. It captures you, and it makes you feel about being in that space, looking out that window and seeing the troops, looking out the window, seeing First Parish, you know, design that was back in 1700s. I mean, we want to do some things that give people the visual stimulation about what it felt like. It doesn't do that now, but that's not a Disneyland kind of technology. It's much more simple.
Well, go ahead, Tom, the floor is yours, so.
Okay, well, let me then, if I can go to my little slide deck, I'll share that with you. Okay, great. And I'm going to run. So as I said, in the slide deck, there's all this stuff to talk to our vision and goals, and where I'm gonna blow through this stuff. And which again, one of the things that's important we've done is that we're focusing each room on a particular thing. There's going to be a room just about the right tavern, a room about it would be recreating a tap room, etc. April 19th room, etc. So you can see each room is sort of focused on a particular topic, and there would be content related to the stories that are told. And then this shows some of the key points that we'd be making it in each of the rooms. That's what all this stuff is. Well, all that would require, and this is sort of a project plan, and this is once we've finished all that, what we want to do with this building is really do four things. One, create tours and educational programs for students, for the population, for whatever, to create a place where people can rent events and weddings and meetings and conferences. We will be running programs. Other people will be running programs in the space, maybe the Transcendentalism Council or whatever. And then there'll also be a place where people can just come and hang out with friends. And that's a lot related to as sort of a place to hang out as a community. So you're maybe like a Cheers bar, people will know your name, whatever. Anyway, so this is the page 22 that I make reference to. All of those changes, when I went through those changes, and if I've missed anything, I go, please catch me on it, is that each of the things requires something to be done and to a thing in the building that I think is important for your review and you know, either approval or review and say it's okay, or if you have concerns, you shouldn't do it that way, that's okay too, whatever these go on. And so I've outlined 7 different elements, and I'm going to kind of walk through those and pause after each one for questions. So the first thing we want to do, as we mentioned, is that we're going to making a couple of structural changes. And this is what this is really showing, and it relates to these 7 pieces. So you can see when I make a reference to the First Parish door, it's where the number 1 is. If we're making a reference to removing a closet in the April 19th room. You'll see where number 4 is. So just so you, in your, your own sheet, you can see where I am on the space. And you can see also that this kind of scope we're talking about is fairly minor. I mean, at least I hope you think this is minor. And this is the blueprint of what it would look like afterwards. So the first one I want to talk about is the replacement of the door. This is the back side of the door, which is indicated to be early, but the front side is not. And the front side is pretty, well, if anybody's ever tried to get in the door recently, Melissa, you were probably there last night. It's difficult to door. The ADA compliant doesn't work. I had somebody give us an estimate of what it costs to repair the door, and it was $36,000. I asked somebody to give me an estimate on replacing the door, so it has the same ADA compliant mechanism, and it would be period specific. It would look just like the same period, but it would be a newer frame. That was like 12,000, maybe 15,000. It was a little unclear whether or not they use the same hinges or not. They sort of, that I'd like them to if they can. So we use the same hardware, but it would be a new door that would be easier to and would open with a different kind of locking system, etc. And so that was the first one we wanted to do, so that we retain our. This is the only door we have that's ADA compliant, at least at this time. And what we want to do with the door is remove it and preserve it, but put it in the basement, because I don't want to, I don't want to destroy anything that I think is original. I want to keep it, and we can keep it in the basement, and we got plenty of room for doing that.
But Tom, and I have a question. When you do something like that, if you're going to make it ADA compliant, you also have to put a little stanchion with the handicap button on the outside of the building someplace.
Yes.
Would that would be away from the building? That would be on the building? Where would that?
Good question. There is one right now, because this door is actually ADA compliant. You'll see on the wall about halfway up on the left-hand side, below the light, there's a button. That's an ADA compliant button for the inside. Outside, there's a concrete post about 4 feet from the door. You push that button and it's supposed to open the door. It doesn't work now. And we want to repair that. So the post those things do exist.
Nancy, do you have a question? Nancy Nelson?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So just been saying time, if you have questions, we'll stop, but otherwise I'll keep moving. So
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, okay, I'll raise my hand again. How old is the outside of the door?
They just say early, and they don't.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What it is, and I wish I had a better definition. I've had people tell me that the outside is not that early, that the backside is early. As you can tell by the framing, that the front side was probably put on as a facade. Probably I've got a record of all of the construction started about 1900 that's been done.
It makes me wonder about what's underneath the facade, which might be original.
Which might be original.
That's all.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I think that needs some thought.
Yeah. The second one, which is one that's important, and I'll explain why, but also, I'm sensitive to this nature. This is in what we call the right tavern room. This is the L. This is the extension that comes off the back. This thing has undergone a number of different changes. In 1793, 95, when the building stopped being an inn, and a guy named Samuel Swain bought the building, he took this section of the building and doubled the size of it. I can show you some pictures if you're so interested. And then it was another 15, 18 feet beyond this. And then in 1885, just before about 1880, when the town was expanding the main street where the circle is, and they were raising the grade level.
Yeah.
We have a marker where it shows that they had to cut this thing back and brought it back. So this was redone, we know, in around I'll call it roughly 1890. And then the indication shows that these posts, there's a post right here that's sort of that I've highlighted in the red and it's supporting a beam, which you'll see. And that is a structural element that they was described once again as early. The problem with where it's located is that it's about 4 feet from the wall, and it's a problem to be able to have we're trying to create like a dining room table there. There'll be individual tables that will string together, but to create this into a fancier room where people can have dinners and events and things like that, it was hard to have that with a post in its current location. So one of the requests we wanted to do is to take this post and move it to the outside wall. It could be, probably would be on the outside, probably, it would show, once again, I don't have a structural engineer involved in this stuff, but I want to get your take on this. If we could move this post, it may require doing something different with the beam that's over this, that's supported in the structure above, in terms of what you may need, once again, I need a structural engineer to look at that. But before I kind of go too far down the road on this one, I want to make sure that was something that a thing that we could pursue. And it's probably the most dramatic change of any things that you'll see in the next other slides, but because it's described as early and it's probably my sense is that post was probably put in about 1890. And our idea is to make it so it's move it to it's on the outside wall as opposed to freestanding with inside the building, inside the room.
But
Yeah.
Doesn't the caption say that the post is modern?
Yeah, it does say that in the caption.
So the post is not the problem, right?
Right.
Is it, why was the post put in? Do you know?
To hold up the beam,
Probably.
probably.
But
Um.
up until 1890, the beam did its job,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
If that was a beam or maybe another beam, who knows what was there before. Yeah.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think this is a very common problem, happens in a lot of, old buildings, and, people are always sistering in, kind of glue lamb beams and variety of different things to deal with a span, because, we like our rooms a little bit more open than they may have been historically. So I think the big question here is, what does a structural engineer say about it? And what kind of impact to the rest of the building would a new beam be required? And what kind of impact would it have on the rest of the building? But I think it's a common problem.
Yep.
And there are a lot of builders who really know how to do this.
Right.
So,
If I can throw my own 2 cents
Yeah.
in here, Tom, you once you get into that, you're definitely going to need a structural guy, because then
Yeah.
you're going to have to get into the discussion of, do I want a piece of steel or do I want another piece of wood, because the
Yeah.
wood's going to hang down below the level of the ceiling. And then
Yeah.
if we want to make a flush room in there, then one thing's going to lead to another, which means more construction.
Right, exactly. Well, one thing that I'm
Right.
fairly clear about it, because I'm trying to minimize costs where we can, would be that we would leave the beam as it is currently there. It may require a steel plate, if you will, that would support it, but I wouldn't want to try to make it flush. To your point, Alan. But once again, I think I would want to talk to structural engineer. So what's really appropriate? But this goes back to philosophy, light touch. If we don't have to change it, I don't want to change anything. So if the beam hangs down from the ceiling, let's let it hang down to the ceiling. It doesn't need to be flush, not affecting anybody going. But where it's located, where the vertical structure is, that is a flow problem.
Would we be able to do an analysis on that post to get the exact date of it?
It's modern. It's
Good question.
identified as modern.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to what you know, again, what era are you trying to interpret? And if this is 1890s, I don't think that's the era you're interested in.
Right.
That's not what you're talking, that's not your story you're telling.
Right, right.
So if it's not required, but I think it seems to me if they stuck it in there, they needed it, so a steel beam or something.
Right.
It's interesting to think about whether or not the really radical reinforcement and fixes that have already been in place might have helped this problem.
Mhm.
That's where the structural analysis is really going to look at it
Yeah.
and give you a good read. So I think, I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding it, I think, Tom, you should get some analysis done,
Yeah,
and then you'll know what your options are.
and then I'll come back to you all and share that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
And the key
That's right.
thing is that, I mean, from a commission point of view, is that post character defining? I rather doubt it.
no,
It's
No.
modern.
So
Okay.
therefore, that kind of opens up some options
Okay.
for you.
But I before I move forward with doing any changes, I'd want to have you all look at it, what the structural analysis would be. So
Sure.
thank you. Well, that's what we'll do for this particular task. Thank you. Number 3 is what we want to do is we have 2 closets that are next to each other. You can see it on the right-hand side. As you can see from the what we want to do is right in this area here where number 3 is. We want to combine those into a single closet, so it would look like this. So it gives us a little bit more room in this room, and at the same time be open. It does not appear to be any sort of flue for any kind of fireplace. And so the idea is restructuring those walls so that we could have a single closet, and they'll be flushed in terms of the floor of the hallway.
Yeah.
And these are modern walls, do not appear to be, once again, but I'm trying to, anything that is structural, I've shared it with you, you know, so there's no, if it's something you all feel that's in your authority, we'd love you to look at it, but
That's the general area for the new entry, right?
Yeah, the new entry would be coming
Right
down.
there. Yeah.
Right there,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
That's
Right.
correct. And exactly where it will be along this wall will have to
Yeah.
be what the design looks like. And that's the big question.
Yep.
And that's a coming attraction. So
Yeah.
we're all gonna be involved.
Can't
Okay.
wait.
So I'll move on to the next one. This is also fairly small. This was when First Parish was doing its construction, they set up offices, and evidently, this is probably in early 2000, 2005, 2008, they put a closet in this room. It's what we call this the April 19th room. What we want to do is take the closet out and take it back to the original floor and the original studs, because there's nothing particularly interesting. I mean, yeah, we probably need closets, but once again, this is number 4. There's a closet here. It doesn't need to be there. It will give us some more footprint, more foot. And so what we're trying to do in this one is take that out. It should be not in that picture, but you know, that's what we're trying to do with that's number 4, is to take out that closet and take it back to the original floor and the original wall, which we think are original, if you will. Okay. The next one is this is a big one. The big deal, sort of, is to create a refreshment center. Just to show you again in the floor plan, what we're doing. This is the area number 5. Right now, there are 2 walls. They're in red here. Holly Craxley put those walls in to create an office in about 1997, I think she told me. And what we want to do is to create this area to become our refreshment center. And there's a description of that, you know, earlier in the slide deck. This will require taking these 2 walls down. We also want to create There's a closet, this is also shown in the thing, there's a closet in the tea room. And we want to sort of close off that and make the accessible into this room where we have number 6 shown here. So 5 and 6 relates to taking these walls down, closing off that closet and open this space up for a number of different possible things in our design. We're working on design of this refreshment center now. Tom and his team is helping us to put it together. We've got some people looking at what can we do to make this in terms of a refreshment center of what we're trying to build there. But what I'm hoping to do is by the April 1st is to have the walls down, have the carpentry put in place. The kitchen thing won't be, the catering kitchen won't be put in place probably until next fall, but we want to have it serviceable by April 1st, if possible, so we can use that and give that experience about serving drinks and serving, soft drinks or whatever. And we can have, we can sell merchandise and things like that. We're going to create a by hutch and we're going to put against this wall here that then will be, but people will be a point of sale system at this point. So we're trying to set this up to build that structure, as I'll talk about, but just to show you where that.
Would that be a 3-bay sink in there, Tom?
There would be a 3-bay sink, as you'll see, this is the designs. There would be a
It's going to
3-bay.
be large. That's going to be very big.
Yeah, and so that's what we're trying to work with the health department. Maybe we can actually do that in the basement, but on the
Yeah.
below.
Wow.
We'd like that would be, but we need to have some kind of sink in this, and this is what the bar would look like. This is, you can see here's a fireplace. Here's where the wall would end, would be something on the other side of the windows. And it sort of looks like this, if you will. And so, and what we would do underneath the bar would be some structure like this with a place for refrigeration and glasses and whatnot.
And that's the original, one of the original rooms.
Say it again? What's the question?
One of the original rooms in the tavern was in
Yeah,
that
oh, yeah.
location.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now that's going to be a snack bar.
Yeah, and because the original, this was the original, building.
Yeah.
So this is
before.
right, this was,
Mhm.
there is a some reports that if you see this fireplace here, that's between the tap room and the April 19th room, there was probably another one here. But in 1830, when it was either Samuel Swan or it was Francis Jarvis, they took out this chimney system and they put in 4 federal style 1830 style fireplaces, 2 here and 2 upstairs in the on the 2nd floor.
And
we
you,
moved it. Sorry, go ahead.
can you see the remnant of that earlier chimney system on the
I
second
have not,
floor?
I've looked in the basement. I haven't seen anything. People have looked for it, but.
But on the second floor, that kind of
there's
funny
nothing.
business in the middle in that same area?
No, there's nothing.
Okay,
They're all-
okay,
They're all, it's just
interesting.
living quarters and hotel rooms.
Mhm.
So the, these are 2 walls from inside that room. This is from the hallway. And this is inside the room. We would want to, as I say, create a closet in that space and close off this one, this door, which is in the tea room. So that at the end of the day, what we would have would be the layout you saw earlier. Okay. Question? All right. So we have, one thing we have done, we did this when the structural, people work on the structure. They found in some of the casements that were in both this room, which is the tap room, and in the April 19th room. When we took the casements off of the beams, the beam existed about halfway down, and below about halfway, it was
Right.
completely eaten by ants or carpenter ants or termites or somebody. Fortunately, no creatures that were still alive. And so they had to replace all of those beams. They did them with nice wood beams. But what they were worried about, the structural guys, were that how far did that stretch? And so they took the section of the ceiling off in this room, which was this thing used to hang down like this, is shown here. That's now gone, and what you see is looks like this. It looks the open wood, and the same thing is also in the what we call the April 19th room. This is what it looks like. We took off part of the ceiling, just say what is a structural, are there issues? Fortunately, there were no issues. But I told them to not put plaster up because a lot of the buildings back then, this goes back to your, once again, the preservation philosophy. You know, they didn't have plasters, and some did have plaster. So plaster was used at that time, but it wasn't, you know, what was it plaster in this room or not? And I don't get any real in the sense of that. So one of the things we wanted to explore is whether or not we should take the rest of the plaster down or whether we should leave it up. And it's sort of a question that I wanted to put to you is, would you give me some advice and counsel? Is no way you should keep the plaster up, or yeah, take it down for sure, or come back to us when you have more information, kind of thing. So I just wanted to review that with you before I, pursued anything related to what to do with the ceiling in these two rooms. This is the tap room and the April 19th room.
I love the open ceilings, but I would defer to the experts, it's the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's so hard to balance. I mean, the old horsehair plaster is, I mean, it's just really special, but I mean, you got to go with the experts and what you can actually do.
Yeah.
Nancy, is this something that Larry Sorley would weigh in on?
That's a good question.
Maybe. The ceilings were lowered in the 1900s, early 1900s. Is that what I saw somewhere?
Right. Yep.
It's a big expense. I don't think it particularly adds to the feeling of the room, and I don't know that there's any way to tell if there was originally plaster there or not. So I don't know. I don't know. It might be a good question for Larry. Tom, do you know Larry?
Yes, I do quite well.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen him in about a year, but.
How about the other Tom? Does he run across Larry? Sorry.
Yes. So I think that would be a good recommendation to see if he could offer an opinion on it.
Yeah. I'll reach out to Larry. That'd be a good reason.
Miriam House has that kind of ceiling, but the rest of the room looks so finished.
Yeah.
So that's the room where the fire was, right? Wasn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's right here, right in this area, right here, this area. Yeah.
Okay. Lauren?
Yeah, I did. I mean, my thought on this is it's there's no one answer, right?
Yeah.
There are lots of different ways you could slice and dice this, and many options that are going to be good options. And it partly comes down to, what's your goal for the appearance of the room. And also, I think sometimes we find when you start opening things up, you may find something that you didn't anticipate, that not so much that it's going to be a repair problem, but that you might not want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you've got maybe one thing that looks off and so forth. So I think there's no one solution, and it's kind of, for what you want to accomplish with the look of these rooms. The easiest solution is to cover it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. People don't notice it. Yeah.
But the beams are cool. I mean, I love them. I think they're really cool. They look neat. That would add ambiance for sure. I just don't know what the condition of the rest of the
except the rest of the fixtures and trim and whatnot are more formal and finished.
Yeah, right. I think that's right. It may look a little bit
funny,
like it's not finished.
Yeah, our sense is that this April 19th room was actually a parlor, as more of a.
So there you go.
That's why we were advised to put wainscoting in here, and the idea of doing that would be that it would make it look more formal. It's the same thing we're trying to do with the Right Tavern. We make it a little more formal. The tap room, the other things that, you know, that even the provincial conference room didn't need that, doesn't need that. That's not the focus of the room.
But
So-
Tom, I mean, I never have gotten the sense that this building was ever a formal enterprise.
Not formal in the sense of, you know, formal in the sense of 1780, I mean.
Well,
it's
so I
like-
mean, wainscoting to me implies maybe a little bit more high. I don't know, I defer to you,
Yeah.
Lauren, but
Yeah.
highbrow, and it's been a tavern, a bakery, in an inn, but
Right,
it
right.
was a very kind of a journeyman operation.
Right.
But some of the pictures of the tavern are quite elegant.
Yeah.
Historically.
And
Set up.
wainscoting is used in service areas and in,
Okay.
you know, it depends on the character, I think,
Okay.
of the room and the kind of wainscoting that you're proposing.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
The one thing about wainscoting that I noticed is that there may have been no documentation in that room for the wainscoting to have ever existed, so I would be.
Right. That's one of the things that, the firm we've been using for the interior decoration design. We were questioning that same thing, as about when was there any evidence that there ever was wainscoting in that room? And so we've gone back and forth, and we may not ultimately do it because basically.
Costs money.
to your point, Melissa, that it wasn't there, and the building will never look like highbrow. It's much more of a pedestrian type of building, and that's also the kind of, go back to our philosophy, we want it to not be the 1790 house or 1780 house. We don't want it elegant. We want it to be real. We want it to be authentic. We want it to feel that you're in a historical
You don't want
piece
to make it
and
up.
not in somebody's really beautiful home. Right, exactly. And that's been the philosophy all along with what we're doing. So I just wanted to get your feel of that, and some concerns about that. That's I hear you, and I think that's a really good point.
Ann Clifford?
Hi, right, and obviously the Secretary of the Interior Standards will give you a lot of guidance here too. You know, it specifically says do not create a false sense of history.
Mhm.
So if there is no evidence of wainscoting in the room, you know, it's not recommended to add it.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Anne.
Right.
But I did
That's-
say,
That's an excellent point. Thank you. Yeah,
don't make it up.
you'll
Right.
make it up. Absolutely right. We don't need to. There's enough
No,
here.
right.
We don't need to.
Mhm.
So, and if we can save some money, I'm all for that. But
Yeah, that
we
too.
got the people on my board who are interested in this, and so I'm trying to also represent different points of view. So I want to hear your point of view, which is important in terms of our this whole process. Is we want to be as open, transparent, open to what we're doing, and keep you informed and things of that nature. So that's those
Oh,
are the
good.
those are
It's
the
important. Can I just add one thing? It's
Yes, please.
important too,
Yeah.
to be very careful about the Secretary of the Interior standards,
Mhm.
because that's one of the tests for getting CPC money.
Right.
And I think it must be in your National Park Service grant and perhaps
oh, it
others.
is.
So
Yeah.
I think you want to really have a high level of fidelity when it comes to those
Yeah.
standards.
While it's I've read it, and while I'm not an expert in structural, it's incredibly informative. But it's like the Constitution. There's a lot of room for interpretation about
Yep.
what is meant by that. And so I'm
Yep.
trying to figure out, get the best guidance to do the right thing, so that, when other people who are historians look at it, says, you all did it right. I want to make sure we're doing that all the way along, and so it keeps all those things in place.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess my question, would be in kind of conclusion, thank you for your time, is it sounds to me that the relating to the we need a structural engineer to look at that, beam, what needs to be done. And how much of that is actually historic, so somebody can tell us both the historical nature as well as the structural nature of that, potential, change. The wainscoting, which is not really part of our conversation, but it's really part of our conversation. The other elements, you seem to be okay with what we, like the closet, the walls that are in for the refreshment center, the taking out the closet issue, and it seems like it seemed to be, did not seem to be concerns. Are there any concerns?
The door,
The front door.
from my point of view, the door.
Okay.
I just wonder if, when you start doing those closets, Tom, what are you gonna find underneath them or behind them, or
Yeah.
when you open one thing up, you might find something else,
Right.
we were doing a job once and they were doing demo in the basement and they found a cistern, and from the 1600s in the basement. So it's, who knows what you're gonna find.
Yeah, yeah. We found where the well is in the Right Tavern. There's a place where the
Mhm.
original well is, so there's a,
Right.
in that sense,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna, that's why I wanna, whatever contractor we work with is somebody who has worked with historic buildings.
Right.
And that's kind of it's a basic threshold before we even consider somebody.
Nancy Frisella-Lee?
Was that?
Hi, so this is a little bit, it's a little bit awkward, this comment, but I'm wondering about the, what are you calling it? The refreshment center? Is that what you're?
Mhm.
Would you have, do you want to have that because you want to evoke the sense of a tavern? I know you're interested in earning some income from the building.
Right.
Would you, if you didn't need to earn that income, would you have that?
That's a good question. We were probably, it's the one room that doesn't have a clear purpose of all the rooms. Every other room,
It could.
the tap room is really clear what that was. The April 19th room is really clear because it's facing Lexington Road. It's a perfect spot. The Provincial Congress is because it looks on the First Parish. The Tea Room is the tea room. The Right Tavern room, as we call it, is all about the Right Tavern and its history and all of that. And it's also where the kindergarten was that Mary Rice did the Little People's Petition. So it's got some historic thing itself. This is the one area, I don't know why, I mean, I know that Holly put the walls up because it had been open. And so my sense is, what was it used for in the purpose? So it's a good question. If we didn't need, somebody wrote us a wonderful check and we could live off the endowment, then my sense is that I'm not sure what we'll do with that space.
I think I'm thinking about something. I'm thinking you also said that you would have, allow people to rent the space for other events. Is that correct?
Right.
That's been discussion in other houses in Concord and where it has been discouraged to do that. And I can't imagine the Alcott House, for example. I don't think they allow people to get married in there, or in the Anderson House, or the old, I don't know about the Old Manse anymore. They used to, I'm not sure about it, or outside, maybe not inside. So I think I'm just a little bit concerned about setting a precedent for other properties in Concord. I don't know how other people feel about that. I want to walk carefully in asking you this.
This is the fundamentals.
I feel uncomfortable about it. I mean, right next door is a church. It belongs to a church. So, so you can claim that, well, I'm getting married in this very historic place. I think that there has to be a real reason for that.
I enjoy this conversation because I think the purpose is really part of, we'll all kind of get some better insights from it. And I guess I thought about what's different about the Old Manse or the Orchard House and the Right Tavern is that those, and also the Buckman Mansion and the Buckman Tavern and the Monroe Tavern, is that you can't sit in their chairs and you can't touch their stuff, and they're object oriented. I've got a great relationship with Lisa Kresner. She says the real power of the Concord Museum is it's object oriented. And I look at it as what is the uniqueness about the Wright Tavern? We don't have any objects. I mean, we have
Space.
but
Have you-
it's really
you-
the space. It's being in the
Yeah.
space itself. So it's
Have you visited the historic Deerfield? Because they have a tavern. I haven't been there for a long, long time, but I did go in there and I can't remember if they let you sit on the chairs, but it's one of the houses, you know, they offer tours of, and
Right.
I don't think they're serving refreshments, but it's a good parallel to what Wright Tavern.
yeah. And we've been trying to go out there. Brian Rosborough is a good friend of mine. He's been trying to get me to go out there, you know, for months.
I'll go
Yeah.
out there. I love a field trip.
So we did look at the.
I'll go with you.
We did look at the Wayside Inn in Sudbury, and they
Mm.
have a bar
Very
with
different.
kind of very similar
Very
thing,
different.
and with a cage bar kind of look, and people are drinking there. They have music, you know, and so there's things that are, and they become more of a wedding center. I mean, while they have a restaurant, if you look at what they do that's historic, there's like 2 rooms upstairs. It's pretty inconsequential. And I said, that's not us. We're not gonna create,
That's
we're
completely
not,
different.
we're not an event place.
Yeah.
In that sense, because we don't have the size, and you need, I mean, our maximum, we're looking at the occupancy, and we're doing some work with it now that the most we probably ever will allow is 100 people in the building. Or at least on the first floor. And so you really can't have a big wedding, and you can't, but you could have it for, maybe the League of Women Voters would want to have a
Well,
meeting
as a matter of fact, we just did.
In the back room.
And-
Well,
what we're
the first floor.
That's different than a wedding. A meeting is different than a wedding.
That's true, and who knows? People, small wedding, I don't know, I'm not gonna,
I don't know. My understanding from you, Tom, though, is that you still have overarching all of this is what happened there in 1774. And
Yeah.
from that is the programming. I saw somewhere that you guys are sponsoring some program. I just saw it when I left the library today. So I'm not sure, or I thought it was. Is that right?
There's a Center for Civic Engagement, is that what?
Okay, so whatever flows from that is what I'm presuming you guys would, any decisions you make to rent the facility, which I understand, well, that's what I did last night. I contracted with you to do this
Right.
for the League of Women Voters, because it seemed a really appropriate marriage between what the league does and what you represent.
Yeah.
To that point, the event last night, the catering operation was external to the historic structure. And what this is going to be, I don't know how financially successful a snack bar would be, a cash snack bar would be in the historic structure, where you have other rooms that are trying to be telling a really historic story. It might be easier to have this kind. I thought at one point the idea was to have the store where the new entrance was going to be. So people would come in and they could get snacks, they could buy gifts and other things on their way out, which is what many museums have. So I wonder if like a snack bar is what you're really gonna. I wonder if anybody's really gonna come there for the snack bar. I mean, you don't have any place for people to sit. No, that's gonna be casual on an everyday basis, and maybe that needs some more thought.
So I can share with you what we are thinking on all that, because, and once again, I want to be sensitive to your other guests, but we've run some numbers and projections and what's the average spend, what percent of people actually buy anything, and we've done all
That's
that.
the carrying capacity.
Exactly, all those projections and stuff like that. And I think what the overarching thing is that we want this to be a gathering place. We want a place where it's open to the community. People can have events there. They can come and just hang out there. The tea room.
Tom, you get into that, you get into a place of assembly or a meeting place, then your codes change a lot on that as
Yeah.
well.
Exactly. And we're trying to
Oh,
be aware of all those
Right.
codes we have to, comply with. And
Place of assembly, a place of, right.
exactly. And it has to do with the number of occupants and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Exactly. And
it's tiny.
and so we're trying to figure out, if you look at this stuff, like from that we've got sort of three goals, if you will. One of which is preserve the building. That's number one, and keep as much original and all the things we can talk about. Two is to open to the public, so it's people feel like it's part of the community. People can go there. And third, that we're financially self-sustaining, that we don't depend upon grants. We don't depend upon funding from the church or from the town. We'll go up to grants. We'll have to always raise money. That's not the big deal. But I was advised early on when we were thinking about it just being a museum that it's going to be very, very difficult for the Wright Tavern to establish a beachhead in the fundraising world in Concord, given the amount of other facilities that do have locked up a lot of the high net worth individuals who provide most of the funding, whether the Concord Museum or the Orchard House or whatever. And so, from a financial point of view, if we could create a place where the sources of income is not just dependent on, a refreshment center, nor is it dependent on tours, nor is it dependent on renting space, or is it related to office space or any of those. If it looks at a portfolio of sources of revenues that we're not dependent on any one of them, therefore none of those have to be at a premium as a dominant force for us to be financially viable. But you have the strength will come in through the portfolio of sources of revenues to offset the cost that we're going to have to operate. And once again, at some point in time, I can share with you all those numbers and all the thinking. But we're still a work in process, and we're learning a lot as we progress. And so we're trying to take our time and, review with different groups of people, those thoughts and ideas, so that ultimately there's a sense that the community owns this building, although it's still owned by First Parish. First Parish has a voice in all this stuff. But anyway, so we're trying to make it a way that accomplishes those goals: the preservation, the community engagement aspect, and the financial sustainability is part of it. And so far, we've been really lucky with getting capital for the money for the capital projects. We're waiting time to raise money on the other things. We'll get there as we get there. But so I could go on, and
Nancy?
I know, Tom, that you guys have looked at this more carefully than we've been able to see today, but it'd be interesting to know what you project for the income from admission fees, from events, how much the building could take, and then to see how essential something called a refreshment center is really.
Yeah.
I don't need an answer now, but I'm very curious about whether or not this is really the big fundraiser, or if it'd be better as interpretive space that would draw more people to come to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's just a question.
We'll see that. Those numbers I can share with you at some point. It's interesting balance. It's about it's the way it works out. And I've had some people validate the thinking on this stuff. About 20% comes from tours and renting spaces. 40% would come from the tavern and sales of things that go related to the refreshment center, and 40% is going to have to come from fundraising. If you look at the Concord Museum, it's about 20% of their revenues comes from stuff that they sell, and something like 60%, I think, it comes from fundraising. We want to not have to be so dependent on fundraising. We're replacing as a balance between this, I'll call it the refreshment center and fundraising. You still gonna have to do fundraising, which means you have to create a place that people want to give to because they support what you're doing and the mission and things of that nature. This is why we're moving as slowly as we can. But it also suggests that we may be pretty dependent upon making sure from a commercial enterprise, we can look at multiple sources of income. So we're not dependent heavily on one particular thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Got
Nope.
that.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very nice, Tom. Thank you for
Thank you
sharing.
all. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
we look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, I'll be back. Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Moving ahead, I think I'd like to skip over MCI Concord for now and just jump right to the historical marker program application, if that's okay. With you all.
Yep, okay with me.
Okay. And do you have that on the screen?
I can bring it up.
Okay.
No, I haven't heard back from the applicants.
Oh.
I haven't heard back from the applicants as to whether they could join us tonight, so I don't think they're here, so you may want to table it.
Yeah, we can table it and postpone it until next month.
It's very exciting and it'd be fun to have them here.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's
Important
really.
house.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Great
Okay.
story.
Do we need a motion to do that?
So moved, that we table, the historic marker program application from Rosa Hollowell and Mark Stein until next CHC meeting.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Lauren,
Aye.
Nancy Frisella Lee,
I,
Melissa,
I,
I'm an aye.
yes.
I think that's it.
I
I'm
thought
in.
it was very exciting.
And Doug,
So,
what about Doug?
And Doug?
It's a great story. Aye.
I changed the way we do
Okay.
these markers.
Oh, I'm so happy to be on the historical commission where the yeses are all ayes.
Yes. Okay. The MCI Concord, let's jump back to MCI Concord. And this was something that we discussed some time ago. We have no representation on the what's going on here in town. And
Yeah, so I move that we nominate Lauren to be on the, I can't remember, well, because I said to you, Ann knows this. I wrote to Ann today, and then I talked briefly to you, Alan, that
Yeah.
I was approached by Linda Miller, who is on the committee, the task force, who could not have been more clear that you need to speak up and request to be participating. And it was the land use planning. I'm sorry, I think I sent it to Ann. She has the name of the committee to ask to be to a member of the historical commission to be a part of that.
let's open it up for discussion among the commission members here. Does anyone have any comments? Nancy?
I think it's critically important that we get in there.
Right.
If we had some kind of a seat on an advisory group, which I think there is one already, there's nothing that says it would have to be only one of us, although it would be better if one person was more attending, was more regularly in attendance. But I think it's important somehow we get in there.
what's
Lauren, do you want to do that? Are you,
Sorry?
is Lauren interested in doing that?
what I'd like to understand a little bit more about what's involved, just from a time point of view.
Oh, no.
That's not clear. There's the MCI advisory group.
Yep.
itself, and then they have split off into, I think, 3 different subgroups. And you might know, we actually at the League of Women Voters, Stefan, you're here. Maybe you could remember, we had them speak before us and explain the differentiation. And Linda Miller specifically suggested, and I'm trying to find it in my email, which group she felt that it would be critical that a member be permanently placed, not just, once, other people can come in. I think their meetings it should be public meetings,
Yep.
Yes,
but.
Wasn't it the land use planning and strategy?
Yeah, I
part?
think you're right. Yes, I think you're right.
yeah,
But that would request that we have a permanent spot on that.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's right.
And how often do they meet? And when do they meet? Do you know?
I don't
Probably
know.
varies a lot depending on what's cooking over there.
Uh-huh. And then, because, I'm not saying no. I wonder if is anybody else, dying to do it?
I mean, I'll volunteer for it. I'm not an expert in the field. I would gladly share it with someone.
I'd go to some of those meetings, unofficially also.
Yeah,
But
I
I
just, but I
think,
would.
Helen, I think you want to request, we have a spot.
Then we can work on it later.
I do want to, yeah, and whether it takes a letter or a phone call or however I need to do that, I will do that. Yes.
I think
But
it's
maybe-
nice to have someone who has a, the secondary appointment, right? And then there's a reporting in every meeting on sort of what's happening. So it's a way to give the rest of the commission a heads up about, what's being discussed. I mean, that's sort of what we used to do, in my previous life. People had, because there always were historical commission spots on various other committees. And then you would report in on.
I think,
Well,
but I think this role, though, you need to be an active voice, because
Yeah.
I think if the historical people don't speak up, you could just get your
gonna lose
interest.
it.
Lose it. Yes.
Right.
And
Right.
I think it's very important at the front end.
Yeah. Right.
Because
you
there's
don't wanna
certain
be-
things we already know, certain things we're going to be very, very interested in. Some meetings we could probably skip.
Yeah.
Right.
But we need to sort of get the lay of the land and see what the scope is going to look
Yeah.
like, and then send those
Yeah.
people who have experience and expertise where it's needed.
And then.
So we
my
just need to formally request the position
So let me,
without
Ann,
necessarily saying who's going to be there.
yeah, Ann, let me ask you a question. Would that take a letter from me to whom within the town organization?
Linda?
Who would I send that to? The
chair.
That's
select
chair.
board or the
Right.
chair of the committee?
I spoke to Elizabeth Hughes about it, and she recommended sending the letter to the select board and the chair of the select board and the chair of
Okay,
the committee.
select
Staff
board,
Concord
okay,
Advisory Board.
okay. I'll have a letter by Monday on this then.
I don't want to gloss over, am I on mute?
Nope.
No.
No, you're not.
I don't want to gloss over what Lauren, what her comment was, because I too am interested. We are
Oh.
really interested. I'm not interested in being that person. No, sorry.
Okay.
I mean, I'm interested in what's happening there. So I would very much like her, or whoever it is, to maybe not give reports every meeting, or if that's appropriate, yes, every meeting, because I find that things, that it's hard to keep up with what's going on. So if we don't do that, we won't be informed.
Right.
So I like your suggestion. Thank you, Lauren.
And I think the front end is going to be maybe the most important thing before they start getting really solidified in their
Right.
decisions about what to take down and what to gut and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then my other question would be to Anne is, it seems like there'd be a need to kind of really coordinate really closely with, what you're thinking about in terms of, and I know we, in terms of additional documentation, what needs to be done. And so there'd need to be that communication also, if you're comfortable with that, Anne.
Oh,
And I was-
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. I would love to have help on that.
Yeah.
And the staff
Right.
certainly is going to be fully engaged in
Right.
discussions
Right.
about this. And
Right. Okay. Well, I'll draft up something. Lauren, do you mind if I send it to you for your input?
I do
Yeah,
not
me-
mind at all.
Okay,
Send it right over.
all right. Stefan? Do you have a hand up?
Hello.
he's muted. Give him a chance.
There we go. Unmuted. I was just looking at the schedule and they seem to meet on an erratic schedule. They met recently on the land use planning subcommittee met on October 29th, on November 5th, and again on November 15th, and again on December 2nd. So it looks like roughly twice a month in terms of how often they're meeting, to answer your question, Lauren.
Yeah,
Is there a
thank you.
next,
Thank you very much.
is there a next meeting identified at the land use committee?
There's nothing on this
Okay.
the schedule at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Probably January, but I don't know
Okay.
when.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
I'll have that over the weekend, Lauren, and then I'll send it off to you.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay. Moving along. Historic preservation planning. Survey recommendations follow up.
Right, so I haven't had a chance to turn to the minutes of the last meeting or put together my own thoughts, but Lauren Meyer has put together that amazing memo that I did distribute to you all. So if there is more feedback, please send it my way, and I can try to put something together to send to Heritage Strategies. I did sort of talk to them a bit and sent sort of short emails, but it would be good to have a, one email that describes the whole, all of the recommendations. But it would be great to hear what you think about Lauren's feedback and summary on both the general plan and the specifics of the National Register
Okay.
and survey recommendations. Or, you all talked about it last week, so I'm not sure if
Right.
you're prepared to talk more or.
Any additional comments on that, or?
Yeah, I just haven't had a chance to go through it, but I will go through it, so.
Me too.
Okay. All right. I guess we're down to other business.
Hang
So-
on,
Oh, yeah.
I think Elizabeth and Peter are on, right, or with us? I see them on the screen. Are they listening into this meeting?
Yeah,
Yes.
Elizabeth just unmuted.
Oh,
We have been, it's a long night, and certainly if you guys need to move on, that's fine. We don't have any expectations. We did think that we might hear more about National Register and survey recommendations, but what I'm hearing is that those are written down and that we'll get them shortly. Yeah.
okay.
Can I just have a quick question to you,
Sure.
Alan, and the committee? So I got an email today from Mimi Graney, who's economic vitality for the town, and she said that the town is looking to do a forum in January entitled "What Does Commercial Development Mean for Concord?" and want to include details on how commercial activity supports preservation goals. And it occurs to me that this might be something that Peter and Elizabeth could help us with. It was kind of an open-ended thing from Mimi, but this is, I think, I'm not sure. Nancy, is Mike involved with this? Do you know what I'm?
Yep, he's chair of the Economic Vitality Committee
I
right
thought. That's what I thought. So,
now.
yeah. I thought maybe Mimi might reach out to Elizabeth and talk to her? Would that be okay? I didn't know kind of how to handle this question.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I guess Ann and I perhaps need to talk offline about it. We're
It's a
yeah,
new task.
it's
Yeah, I don't know what Mimi's looking for.
right. I can imagine some of the things that we might tell them about. And by the way, I apologize, but Ann and I rehearsed this and I thought I could get online with my Zoom, but yet again, it has failed me.
Okay.
So-
We can hear you.
But we're perfectly willing to advise Mimi and help and do whatever. The choice of the town not to pursue Main Street leaves me sort of unable to help much in terms of what I know about running small downtowns. Certainly happy to talk further. I think Ann and I should do that together because the continuity here is with Ann.
Yes.
Not, and I think she's, any opportunity to have staff-to-staff conversation really ought to take place with Ann. And we're, support in that.
Well, I did suggest she talks to Ann, you and Elizabeth. I don't know why it was other couple questions more related to the stuff I might know just be so old and living here a long time. So.
I doubt it. Anything else to follow up on, Elizabeth? Any updates or?
No, I think, we've got Alan, you and Melissa are, getting sort of in-depth overload of materials with Ann, but just the status is that we have embedded all recommendations into draft chapters 4 and 5, which succeed what you may have seen from December 2nd, but I did a dive in tonight to make absolutely certain that what we wrote has every recommendation that you all developed for November 14th, which has turned out to be, I think, a very, very strong backbone for everything. There are other recommendations that we felt were needed once we really thought through context for groups of actions and then details for each of the actions. It makes us, it's a discipline to help us think it through. So we feel pretty good about where we are. It's a lot. I know that you guys feel like it's too much, but one philosophy that I emerged out of chapter 5 especially, chapter 5 is the cross-disciplinary approach. And just one thing to say about that is that you all have some very high-powered planners, citizen planners in your town, which, some very good planning has taken place with Envision Concord and open space and climate resiliation. And Stephen, it's nice to see you there as housing production plan. Some really excellent planning. And you guys need as much reinforcement as you can get to edge yourselves into that conversation with the town. I am so happy to hear you guys talking about MCI Concord in the way you did. That is exactly what you need to be having happen. And to the extent that this plan can help you, we want to make sure that's become, in my mind, as your planner, an overarching goal, that I'm really concerned that you don't get no respect. I've heard this from you guys, the big one is the communications. So I'm sorry, I'll stop, Lauren, and I see you have a hand.
My question, and I hope it's okay, and if I ask this question, is really about, I'm seeing just little bits and pieces here and there. So it's hard to, that was part of, what my feedback was to Ann, hard to understand how the priorities all sort out. And so I'm just wondering, how do we, when we're looking at pieces of material that is out of context with the rest of the plan, how do we sort through what things rise to the top? I certainly could take each sort of chapter and kind of juggle the priorities a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, what's going to rise to the very, very top? And I think, what you just said Elizabeth, was really interesting. And, that might be the tone of the, that might be the cream at the top, in the final executive summary or action plan or whatever it is. But that's really my question.
Yeah, it's a great question, Lauren. I think, one of the things that we miss is more dialogue with you guys. And it's just hard, And so one of the things to remember is that if you take the original body of work that you all created for the public on November 14th, and understand that that's our backbone, where you need to go at this point is, at least the way we feel, because we don't talk to you very often, is you're getting a lot of detail from us in these two chapters. They're the heart of the plan. And what we're telling you with that is what we know. Now, we can't, and it is so easy once it's written, once it's on paper, to cut it back. But if we miss something, it's a struggle for us. And you guys, sometimes you don't see what you've missed because it's just not there. So if we can get into your plan, we can take it out. Okay. So we're giving you our best effort at understanding context. So we take, groups of your the top of the list here is your operations for both your commissions, right? So, and one of the top of the list is that whole aligning preservation with other aspects of town planning. That's in there. It actually wound up, because of further analysis we did, it actually wound up being the top recommendation in chapter 5 instead of chapter 4. And we can talk about that. Once you see how we're seeing it, we're happy to reorder. But one of the things we can't do is give you priorities without.
Right.
So we're giving you what we can, as much and too much. I totally agree with Ann and you and anybody else who said that. I mean, it's hard in this world of not reading. And, the model plans that Concord has right now, in my perspective, is, open space, Envision Concord, and the resilience plan. The housing production plan is a very good, straightforward, shorter plan, but the other three are expanded. And it's what's kind of interesting about that is that you take 2015 open space, massive, amazing citizen planners wrote that. They didn't have a heritage strategies helping them. They had Delia and themselves. And of course, among theirs, there's some people who's, have stars in their crowns in the terms of the field. So you had that. And then Envision Concord, amazing product, lots of community involvement. We take it very, very seriously, and we have woven it into the plan as much as possible. Maybe too much, I don't know. And then, but it's a little smaller, a little different, a little less detailed than you see in open space. Then when you move to 2020 and you move to climate plan, then it's even a little thinner. So now where we're headed, where we could be headed, is something even thinner for us. Fine, no problem. But we need to understand that we're doing that, and that if you don't have enough of a platform to argue with your fellow citizen planners, I worry about Concord. Concord is, oh my gosh, how could we have any conversation with somebody in town who says, why is this necessary? But you're having those conversations. You're having complaints about how things go and yada, yada. So we have to, so central to that is the alignment issue and the communications issue. So I can see those as being priorities, but you all need to help us with around the edges. And definitely with the National Register and the survey, the more we can get to the point of having in the plan, the survey plan that we call for, how much better would that be, right? But we don't really, we've come up with a long list of ideas in there, but what rounds it out from your perspective in terms of the way you all are doing your work. So we need to hear that. So that's kind of, so 4 and 5 is the heart of the plan. 1 through 3 are going to give you that sense of the people and the historic preservation practice. We're not going to write that until we've had more conversation. What we are doing is the recommendation that Ann made a week ago, and I'm finally there in leading us through this process. And we believe that you need a 16-page, this is long for an executive summary, but a 16-page executive summary, highly produced, boiled down, flip every page and you get 1 or 2 thoughts. I'm sort of halfway through working it. It's working for me, but in terms of design, don't trust me on design. Just let's look at the content and see if we can get that sense right. But I think it is a very big help already to me. I've sort of, you know, I can't reopen 4 and 5. I'm just not, but I want to because this is an iterative process. It is a process as much as it is producing something. It's a process. So every time you write something down and talk about it, you see some new things. Every time you look at it through a different lens, you know, you start thinking about that alignment issue I mentioned earlier. How great is that an idea? It's not even, we don't have to, I mean, we just have to adopt, you know, push with Envision Concord, okay? But where that really belongs is in a section where we start talking about cross-disciplinary support from the town, where, you know, you have 3 different things that you can use to try to get yourselves into that conversation. You know, hang on to the sustainability issue, understand how you play that role, what, you know, because it is just like historic preservation, it cuts across everything. So the more you sort of look at how you fit into that and they fit into you, the better off you'll be in terms of sort of lots of things across town. Second is paying attention to everybody else's plans, which I think we're modeling in this plan. And the third is this alignment issue. So that's why it wound up coming out of chapter 4 and going into 5, because it really sets the stage for talking about all the other programs that you may or may not want to have in there. Long section by yours truly about trees, because I adore trees. And so there's a section in there that you may simply say, you know what, we don't have the bandwidth to deal with trees, and everybody else is doing fine. We don't have to say a word about it, you know, or something in between. Whatever we've given you, nothing, or something that you all see would be useful to do. So that's the kind of thinking that we'll need back from you guys. Timing wise, you know, it's a little frustrating to think that, you know, we really needed to have something tonight to you guys that was finished, and it's not. So, you know, we'll just keep working as much as we can to, you know, give you what you're asking for from this point forward. And what you've been asking for is the executive summary. And we think that would be
okay. I think the executive summary would be so helpful. And that way we can use that, and then we can really look at the chapters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really for you.
With that as the framework.
Exactly. You put that thinking cap of 16-page executive summary on, you've read it, you've absorbed it. Now, when you look at chapter 4, it makes sense. And
right.
You see what you don't want, what you do want, where there's too much detail, where you actually might need more. So, you know, there's a whole lot of balancing here, but I think the big key insight that you brought to this process is this executive summary. Yeah.
Okay,
and
great.
let me just tell you one more thing. We're not going to name chapters in the executive summary. I just feel like it doesn't make sense to anybody. Let's just tell them what you're doing, you know, saving historic districts, learning more about your resources,
right,
participating in housing, whatever. So those are the sort of big thoughts that you'll see page by page.
Right.
Right. And
go
ahead.
I'm a big fan of just really stating what your goals and objectives are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're saying, rather than worry about whether it's a chapter heading or not. It's what are you trying to accomplish?
Right. And we actually didn't do that in the stuff that we did for the public on the 14th. Very successful. Nobody asked us what chapter it's going in.
Right.
Just in the content.
Right. So so the chapters are very, very, very long.
Yeah.
And I found it sort of difficult to get back to where we were on November 14th, where the recommendations were clearly tied to goals, and the goals were clearly tied to what people care about. So I think it might make sense and I've started to do this when I have time to go through and just, you know, get back to like November 14th, where we were, what the public has seen, and sort of just pick out the other recommendations that have been added since then, and just, you know, have just a slightly longer list of bullet points, and sort of so that you can all see you know, all of the pieces, and see like the context that you're talking about, because now it sort of gets lost in all of the words. So I think there is a way to just sort of boil it back down, see where we are, see whether you agree, right, with the recommendations and goals, and then start, building back out from there. And I mean, if you want, I can share all of the rest of the chapter too, and I think you'd probably like to see that, but I'm just warning you that it's very, very long. So I'm just trying to think of ways that would make it easier for you all to work with it, because now it's so long it's hard to work with.
Yeah, let me just comment on that, because
Okay, yeah.
what Anne, you've been working with was an effort that we made a really good effort at trying to put all the recommendations out in chapter 6. We wrote some of that, and then we went in and we wrote chapter 4, and we realized that we were finding ourselves wanting to sort of conclude. This is a part of the remark I made to you, Melissa, at one point, is that when you're reading chapter 4 and there's no actions in it, we can do that, and it will be, and we've in chapters 4 and 5, we now have, I think we did this in 5, but we definitely did it in 4, because we went and pulled everything out of 6 and put it back in 4. Because you read about your programs, and then you have to go to another chapter to find the actions. That may or may not work in the final analysis. It might, but it's easier right now to keep it all together so that you can see the program description and the actions with the individual descriptions for the actions. And somehow you have to figure out, where does that all go? For us, in terms of writing, it's different than trying to keep things short. It's trying to making sure that we've written everything that all goes together. After we finish it all, then we could pull the actions out completely if you want to, or not. Right now they're in. And that does make chapter 4 especially, it's chapter 4, I think, that's longer. I was a little bit surprised that chapter 5, which is the cross-disciplinary, wound up being much shorter than chapter 4. But maybe that's appropriate, because we're talking about the historical commission, we're talking about education, we've got the town assets in there. So there's a whole bunch in one chapter. So, I mean, I'm talking in a vacuum that you guys don't, we can't fill your vacuum for it right now. I think you need to take a look, but just bear in mind that there are different ways to do this. And I think I agreed with Anne when she first saw our effort to do kind of all the recommendations in one place. It really did make sense. But then once we started trying to really fill out 4 and 5, it made it difficult for us. So we went back to our original way of doing it. But we can go back and take them out. So then they'll be much shorter. I mean, the actions are probably at least half the material in each of those 2 chapters, the individual actions. So once you read those 2 chapters, you know what we know. And then from there, we have to figure out what will work for you and the town.
I have one other question. I'm sorry, I know you want to wrap up. And that's about audience. And, I'm new to Concord, so I don't have the encyclopedic memory about every plan that's been done and what the 1992 survey did and what the 2013 survey. I mean, I've tried to go back and look and try to learn. But it did make me think, well, will the average Concord person know that kind of detail? And who is the audience for the plan?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the original question from our perspective is, the average resident. At this point, the average resident is definitely the audience for the executive summary. It needs to be handled well and attractively so that if somebody wants to read any more than that, there'll be a plan to back that up. And for that audience, I would argue that it's more your citizen planners and your community leaders than it is the entire.
I would like to think that there's even maybe the shortened version that we could publish in the newspaper. I think that question of audience is brilliant, because we want the community of Concord to care about what you're working on, not to the extent that we would, or real, our planners or, or even staff of the town, but I'd like to think that some people who live in Concord would think, oh, wow, look what Concord is doing. They're on high. They're trying to think how our future should be shaped. And these are the opportunities. This is what we could miss. I'd like to think that the paper might take an interest in it once it gets published. And I would like us to pitch it to them.
Well, we have actually, it's been so long since we ever did this, but we have actually published some executive summaries as inserts to local papers. I'd be hard put, you would have to help me remember, I'd be hard put because
Well, but I think it's something to explore.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, it could be made very attractive. I mean, that's a design issue. Once we get content, we can figure that out. But yeah, if they take inserts, as an advertising thing, let's see what the budget looks like for that.
Or just, could be just bullet points in an article, right? With a couple of illustrations. I mean,
Yep.
that might be more.
You can interview you. I think, yeah, Lauren, I think there's a lot of ways we could do this,
Yeah.
but I do think it's something we would really like the public to know, particularly because we made a big effort early on to do the survey of the community, and a
Yeah.
lot of people participated,
Right.
even those, a lot of people were aware of it who didn't participate, but we had 300 and some, which I know in a town of, what do we have, 17,000 people is small, but it's a relatively good participation number.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be an important follow-up publicly to do this.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
We need a way to capture them and then keep them interested.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also to kind of put pressure on some of these developers. My goal out of all of this is we stop mansionization in Concord.
Yeah, golly.
Yuck,
Yeah.
yuck, yuck.
Yeah, well, we've taken a run at it, guys. It's, it's. Yeah.
It's homogenization too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because all the new construction all kind of looks the same.
What's interesting about that is that MAPC for you guys, Metropolitan Area Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Regional, they're projecting no change in your population through 2050. And as a matter of fact, for the last 30 years, your population has hardly varied from one end to the other. There might have been some ups and downs, but the change that you're seeing is different from population pressure. It's the footprint of the same population. And it's a very interesting insight. And I think that's a kind of hook. Yeah, Doug. Yeah.
It's going to change. There's a lot of potential housing coming that will be coming on.
I wondered about that too. I mean, all that 40B stuff you've got going in West Concord,
and the Mass Communities Act and MCI.
Yeah.
And it's going to hit West Concord a lot.
I think it's legitimate to ask MAPC how they made those assumptions, what they need to change for you so that you can make some projections. But I do, it's one of the things that I'm starting to see kind of out there and reading a lot about housing lately is that people are realizing that household size, the shrinking of households, which has been a trend over the last umpty years, I mean, decades really, that's actually had an impact on the way we have to think about housing. And there are lots of other things that I could talk all night about housing at this point, but it's definitely worth thinking about your layer. I do think in terms of your eras and your layers, this is a massive layer change that you're getting. I mean, Nancy sits on my shoulder every time I write about lighting and roads. Nancy, not Nancy Frizzell, my other Nancy. But there's a lot of change.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. And one of the agendas I made a copy of didn't have anything after our historic preservation planning, and then another agenda I copied had other business. So Is there any other business that we need to get to?
Well,
Just minutes. There
Okay, yeah, and then just the minutes,
are
the,
5 sets of minutes,
I
yeah,
don't know,
unless you had other things.
no.
I didn't, no. Melissa? Anyone have
No, I
any?
was going to move that we approve. I mean, I read these minutes. They went back. I was going to move, because I read them.
Yep.
I read them, so
January,
maybe other people
February.
haven't read them. We need to make sure everybody has read them, but I was going to, if they indeed they have and have no
Well,
objections or no emendations, to adopt the minutes from these
from the
Uh,
planning.
5 dates.
I second.
All in favor? Aye, it looks unanimous. Meetings have been approved. Thank you.
I thought they
Um,
looked great. I wasn't at most of them, but I thought they did look good. I'll approve them anyway.
You can watch them on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought the minutes
Having
looked really
having
good.
said that, I think unless there's any other business, we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Sounds
Meeting is
great.
adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.